Hello, everyone. My name is Alyssa. Welcome and thank you for joining us for tonight's event. I work for The Word, a storytelling sanctuary, and we are a nonprofit organization working to build a publishing community that will fight for inclusivity. Our mission is to promote voices from underserved communities and diverse backgrounds, to honor the stories of those who have faced adversity and injustice, and to provide a sanctuary space where we can see ourselves in literature. To learn more about us, you can visit our website at www.thewordfordiversity.org. Again, that's thewordfordiversity.org. And I'm so excited for this event to bring it together. We have our BIPOC Bookseller Award winner, Calvin Crosby, who won the Leadership Award. And we have our Joy Ambassador and New York Times bestselling author, and Angeline Boulley. And we are so excited to talk about the importance of bookselling. This is an event presented by Margins Bookselling, and just a little bit about our amazing participants. So we have Calvin Crosby is the 2022 BIPOC Bookseller Award winner, won the Leadership Award, the former executive director of Kaliba, and now the co-owner of King's English Bookstore, the co-chair of the Mosaic Community and executive director of Brain Food Books. In 2021, Calvin returned to his hometown in Salt Lake City before spending 25 years in Northern California, Indigenous bookselling worlds. And we're just so excited to be able to have you here. And then we have Angeline Boulley, who is an enrolled member of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians. She is a storyteller who writes about the Ojibwe community in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. She is the former director of the Office of Indian Education at the U.S. Department of Education. Angeline lives in Southwest Michigan, but her home will always be on Sugar Island. Firekeeper's Daughter is her debut novel. And here we go.
Angeline, I'm so excited to talk to you.
And I'm excited to talk with you too.
We were
Are
supposed
you
to talk
going to
about the
tell
importance.
people our connection?
Oh, yeah. So I also should say that I'm a member of the Cherokee tribe. The King's English Bookshop in Salt Lake City, where I grew up, and what inspired me to be a bookseller is the most, I would say, the most colonialist named bookstore there is. But with me coming in as an owner, we're now Indigenous owned. And my new motto is land back, one independent bookstore at a time. Prior to this, I was the executive director for the California Independent Booksellers Alliance. And in those dark days and during the shutdown, we were still introducing our booksellers to authors. And Angeline was one of our Mirrors and Windows speakers. And this was before the book came out. So we have some Nancy Drew stuff to talk about too a little later.
Always, yes.
I rewatched the Kaliba presentation. I just what a difference 2 years makes from where you were excited to eventually see your book in an independent bookstore to where you are now, where it is a staple, certainly for all the bookstores I've worked in, and certainly at my store.
Music to my ears. Yeah. And it's been these 2 years. It's been I never could have predicted where I would be now, and just to see how well the book has done, and people from all different walks of life, that this book resonated with them. And to me, that's the greatest compliment an author can get, is when someone says that, they saw themselves in a story.
It is, there's much more representation now, but it's still not enough. I mean, I'm gonna be that person.
Definitely.
When I rewatched the Kaliba thing you talked about, we'll go to Nancy Drew and then we'll talk about how important bookstores are. But I got to get the Nancy Drew thing out of the way.
Yes.
You talked about how much you liked Nancy Drew and how, despite how much you liked her, it still was not representative. And you wanted to have that smart young woman who could solve a mystery. I don't know that I'm smart. I'm definitely not a young woman solving mysteries, but I loved Nancy Drew growing up. So when you said that, or when I reheard that, I was like, oh, we have to talk about this. The best part about Nancy Drew in my life was that it got me out of the deer hunt. I was supposed to be the lookout, and I was in the middle of a particularly good Nancy Drew with my flashlight up in a tree at 4 a.m. watching for the deer. But then I remembered I had my book hidden in my coat, so I started reading my book. And at about 6:30 in the morning, my dad and all of his friends with their guns was standing below watching me turn another page in my Nancy Drew mystery.
That is a really good Nancy Drew story.
So, if I could revisit that, I would rather have the firekeeper's daughter in my hands.
Yeah.
So you are a fan of independent bookstores, and
Most definitely. Yes.
can you tell me the importance or why you like them, and how the indie channel has responded to your novel?
There has been so much love from the indie booksellers. I know that, my book launched during COVID, during the pandemic, and there is one little bookstore in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and they carried my book. And my book, like the owners of Island Books and Crafts, they've told me that my book kept them afloat during the pandemic, because they sold my book, and everybody wanted it and they had it, and they're a tiny bookstore, and I just love that it helped them get through a really difficult time when we didn't know how things were going to be, how long it was going to last. So yeah. And then I have a really great indie bookseller story. The week after I had the 12 bidder auction for
Wow.
for Firekeeper's Daughter. I was still working for U.S. Department of Education. I was the director for the Office of Indian Education, and Minneapolis just so happened to be hosting the 50th anniversary of National Indian Education Association, NIEA, their annual convention. So all of my staff, we went there. We did like 9 different workshops that we presented. And then during our lunch period, I said, we have got to go see Louise Erdrich's
Yes.
bookstore, Birch Bark Books. And I went there and I showed my staff like where my book would be shelved. I'm like, okay, this is their YA section, and this is where my book would be. And it was so incredible coming off of that auction and knowing that my book would be on that bookshelf. And it just, yeah, it was like sharing the moment with an indie bookseller.
Oh, I was actually just in Minneapolis at her store within the last month, and your book is still on the shelf.
That is wonderful.
Her bookstore, can we just talk about how amazing it is?
Oh my God, there is no place like it.
Mm-mm.
It's smaller than what I thought, but when you go in, you're just amazed at the books that she has, and then the language resources that she has, the books about language. It's incredible.
And the picture book section.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, I was literally speechless looking at the representation, particularly the representation for Indigenous people in those picture books. Like, blew my mind. And I like that she's also committed to the local tribe with the jewelry. And when I was there the first time, she had I think he was like 99 years old, and he was making bird houses out of reclaimed wood that he found along the side of the road. And of course, I had to buy one because who doesn't need one? But
Yes,
it
yes.
is still one of my most cherished objects. It is just so beautiful when I think that, someone nearly 100 years old put this together and it was sold in an independent bookstore.
Mhm.
Let's say the name of the small store again.
Island Books and Crafts in Sault Ste. Marie,
There we go.
Michigan by Les and Kelly Townsend. And it's just the most wonderful little bookstore. And um, I make sure that they have signed copies. And, I just love them.
And it's Birch Bark Books and Native Arts in Minneapolis is the other store that we just mentioned. And
Yeah,
I want to give my people a shout out.
definitely.
Do you have a special memory beyond the Island Books? Maybe you've done some touring now. Maybe there's
I have. And, even in my career, I would travel for different conferences and meetings. And to me, it's like finding that indie bookseller in the community. To me, it's like finding the community and being able to browse through a bookstore and just get a feel for the community, a feel for the town. I just feel like indie booksellers do that better than anywhere else. And so I have loved traveling and just browsing stores. Um, Petoskey, Michigan is one of my other favorite indie booksellers. McLean and Eakin. Oh my,
yeah.
they are phenomenal. And I always make sure they have signed copies, and they've just treated me so well, and they're just so supportive. A Michigan author. So there's nothing like an indie bookseller.
They're two of my favorite people. They're so nice.
Yes,
They're
yes.
so nice, and they really seem to be having fun. Everything they do just has light shining through it.
Yep, and they have that big yellow chair that authors sit in, and so many interviews have been done in the big yellow chair, and I love them.
And I wanna kind of go off the how welcoming indie booksellers are. I mean, I've given 30 years, almost 30 years to this industry, and it's because back in 19 I want to say it's like 1980, I wandered into the King's English Bookshop, and it didn't matter that I was brown, it didn't matter that I was queer, it didn't matter that I had pierced ears at that time. Like it didn't matter. I was welcomed, and everyone was friendly, and I had a valid opinion, and we could exchange ideas and book recommendations as if I was one of them.
Definitely, yes. Oh my gosh. A friend was headed to LA, and I was like, "You have to go to Book Soup." I mean, you just have
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
And I'm headed to Washington, DC tomorrow, and I'm like, "Oh, of course I'm gonna go to Kramer's, and I'm gonna go to Politics and Prose, and, there's other, books that it's like every itinerary for where I go. I'm like, "Okay, and what bookstore am I going to hit?" Because you just get so much of the character of where you're at.
Yeah, and DC's really showing up. They have several black-owned bookstores. I
Oh,
think
I see.
Loyalty and Mahogany
Loyalty.
Books.
All
Yeah,
right. I'm gonna check that one out.
um, they're like DC is really, really fortunate with the diversity of independent bookstores they have.
Mhm.
So that's like I could do the whole like a whole weekend of nothing but independent bookstores in DC.
Well, if you're not doing anything this week, tomorrow through Thursday, and yeah, that's other than my speaking engagement, that's what I will be doing.
Oh, so jealous. Where else are you headed to?
This speaking engagement tomorrow is kind of my last speaking event for the year, and it's been an incredible year. I've been busier in 2022 than I was in the year that my book debuted, and I was just at Y'all Fest in Charleston, South Carolina. Um, that Blue Bicycle Books in South
Yes.
Carolina. Oh, it's incredible. And then I was where else was I? I was just in Anaheim, California for the National Council of Teachers of English. And I'm telling you, this is the best part about being an author, is like getting recognized and you feel like a rock star. And you are a rock star to these librarians and teachers, and there are no finer fans than library and teacher people. Like, yeah.
It is amazing because that it's that enthusiasm that they instill in their students who become our readers at the bookstore. We have a nonprofit that we just launched on the store's 45th anniversary, and it's Brain Food Books. And the idea is exactly that, reaching out to the teachers that are working in the underserved communities, reaching out to the pediatric clinics that are in the underserved communities, and getting them. We want book equity in the same way that we want food equity. We want it
Yes.
normalized that you can see yourself, you can see other worlds, you can find hope, you can find information, you can find entertainment, that's accessible for everyone. So it's exciting for me because now no kids. I get to go into the schools and hand these books out and see the light and the happiness. And then we get the thank you notes saying, like, I didn't know, like, I never thought I would own a new book, or I never thought I would meet an author. And my favorite is always that I never thought I could be an author, but now that I've heard the author speak, I think maybe I could try to be an author.
You know, just seeing that it's possible, it unlocks it unlocks something in our minds. And, um, it sounds so trite that, write the book you wish you had read as a young person. But that's exactly what I did. I wrote the book that teen me, who, I sometimes felt like I wasn't native enough, or in other situations I was too native. Um, and so writing the book that I wished I could have read as a teen, and know that I wasn't alone, and that what I was going through was perfectly normal, and that, there's so many different ways to be Indigenous, and how I was exactly great.
And Donis goes through that. And,
Yes.
56-year-old man, and I still identify with, am I not native enough? Am I, not queer enough? Am I like, where am I not smart enough? Like all those things. So for me, having Donis go through that, even at 56, was important.
Yes. And just realizing, like the moment that she realizes and claims her identity and knows that a tribal card isn't going to make a difference, what other people think isn't going to make a difference. It's like seeing that moment that she knows who she is and she claims her identity. And it's like, for the rest of her life, she's going to be okay no matter what, because she is grounded in her identity, and nothing that anyone says to her is going to shake her from that foundation.
Yeah, I think of the 14-year-olds. I think of the 16-year-olds, the
Mhm.
20-year-olds that have also been that person to have that validation and see that we are enough in our own identities. So I think I'm just saying thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
um, what do you think? Is there a connection between joy and the community that bookstores bring, or
Absolutely. It's just, when you're selling a book, you're selling this opportunity to expand the mind and, step into a different world, step into different, shoes, step into a different experience. And it can change a life. I guess that's what I love most about books, is it can draw you in, and it's like the words, it can read like poetry, and it can strike at the core of your being and change the way that you see yourself and the way that you see the world around you. And to me, that's like magic. And so to me, that's what books are, these gateways. Can you imagine, you know, gateways to just changing how you view the world around you and your place in it?
I'm so glad this is being recorded, not because I want to see myself, but I want to write that quote down. That was everything for me.
Well, I've been, just how you were in the in the deer blind with a flashlight. That's pretty indigenous to me. I was underneath the blanket covers with a flashlight reading long after my mom, said to go to bed. And just to sometimes books serve as this escape, sometimes our current reality. And so for those kids out there that need that escape, I'm so glad that a book can do that and can help them. And
Yeah.
even if it's a temporary escape, I'm thankful for that, uh, and what that gives to a young person.
Me too. I know that for me, it was that it showed me that what I knew as my world wasn't all there was. There's so much more outside, um, beyond our porch.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And then, when it's a situation so different from your own, but yet you can connect with the feelings that the main character has, and you're like, "But wait, I feel like that too, but they're so different from me." And so that whole, tapping into empathy and, wait, I never knew that that's how another person could feel who could be so different from me. So yeah, books and representation and stories that weave, find their way into our hearts and change us. Um, I think if you talk with anybody, they can talk about like a book that changed them, made their world make sense, or introduced them to a whole new world that changed how they viewed everything. Was
Um,
there a book for you?
no, it was interesting because my family was not readers. We had a Children's Illustrated Bible, and I want to say one of the lesser known Dr. Seuss books, which I read both of them to death. And I think my takeaway from the Illustrated Bible was I learned to draw clouds because there was a lot of clouds in it. But it wasn't until kindergarten, and the kindergarten teacher was reading us Ramona the Pest at story time. And I remember sitting there on the rug thinking, I'm not sure what she's doing, but I want to do that. And I need to know more about Ramona. And God bless her, Miss Young kept me after and taught me to read before I went to first grade. And it honestly changed my life. I became a voracious reader.
Mhm.
But looking back, there was not representation. I mean, Call It Courage or any of those were not really the vibe that, and
Right.
I could say that brushing my auburn hair 100 times before I go to bed really helped me, as it did Nancy, but I didn't have auburn hair.
Yeah.
You know, even the Hardy Boys and stuff was really not there. There was certainly no native boys that showed up, and back then certainly no queer boys that showed up. So there was Ramona the Pest and Henry. So thank God for Beverly Cleary.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you? What was the book that the light bulb went on?
Um, it was I Am the Cheese by Robert Cormier. And, it's this story that you think you're reading, and then when you get to the last chapter and you're like, "Oh my gosh, the world is dark." And it's this, you're like, "Oh, wait, what this character was going through on his journey is not at all what I thought it was." And, to me, that a satisfying story could be dark and not tie things up neatly. And it changed me. And I think maybe that's why I write the way that I write, with so many twists, and just when you think you have things figured out, and even if you figure out one thing, I really hope that I kind of throw you for a loop and catch you off guard. I think that's, for me, that was, as a reader, it really shook me. And maybe that's why I do, my last 100 pages of Firekeeper's Daughter had, I'm very happy when I hear readers say that they could not stop during that last 100 pages.
No. And what's interesting is how long the characters stick around in your psyche. Like, I'm still thinking about Levi, and like
Yep.
I
Granny
have
June,
hope. I have hope for him.
yeah, yeah. Stormy and
Yeah, all of them. I want to say, thinking back to books that did that. I think Love Medicine was the first book, and I was in my mid to late 20s when I discovered Love Medicine, and it was the first time that things I knew of were really addressed. The representation was there, and that it includes the good and the bad and everything. But it was the first time I felt like I was actually maybe looking at a mirror, maybe not head on, but still.
hmm Yeah, that first chapter of Love Medicine, with the woman that's looking for love, and she's got the shirt that, rides up a little too high over her belly, and, the jacket that doesn't quite zip right. And there was something that was so familiar about her. And, you know, I, I saw my aunts in her. And, um, what I love about Louise Erdrich is that she writes about these families, and then 4 books later, this other family that is tangentially mentioned, in this one book, and then it's like, and to me, that's what family is it's all of these, like, "Oh, but don't you know that there's this family over here, and we're connected in this way?" And I love that, story expanding in the way that our families are.
Absolutely, and you have lots of characters that way that could hold their own play, their own novel. And you mentioned Granny June, who she one of the things I have in common with Donis is that I put off going away to college because my grandmother was not doing well, and so I delayed a year so that I could spend more time with her before she passed. And this is where I get the Cherokee line from. And I spent as soon as school was out, my grandparents would come pick me up, and I spent the entire summer traveling, mostly the Southwest, with my grandmother and my grandfather. And so being there at 18 years old, being able to care for her and honor her as she went on to the next world was one of the most valuable things I think ever. So I had a lot of like it. It brought up a lot.
And I think, there are people who are like, "Really? An 18-year-old would not go to
No.
not go away to college because of worried about how her mom was gonna be, or to look after her mother after these family tragedies?" And I'm like, "Do you know any Indigenous people?" Because
This is what we
there are
do.
many decisions that get made, based on, caretaking. And, so yeah.
And I know that she raised me to be that caretaker. So
Mhm.
her work paid off.
Well, of the many characters in
Mhm.
Firekeeper's Daughter, I am so, so, so excited. One of the 6-year-old twins is the main character in my next book, Warrior Girl Unearthed. So it's set 10 years after Firekeeper's Daughter. And Perry, the feisty little twin from Firekeeper's Daughter, is the main character. And I pitch it as Indigenous Lara Croft, but instead of raiding tombs, Perry is raiding museums and private collectors to return our ancestors and save their names home. Yep.
Oh my God. And when
May
so,
2nd. May 2nd
okay.
it comes out. It's available for pre-order, and we just started handing out this. It's the first 4 chapters. We handed it out at Y'all Fest and at NCTE in Anaheim last week. So there's this like little sampler going around to introduce you to Perry Firekeeper Birch and what she's up to.
I'm totally geeking out. I've lost all train of thought. I'm so excited. But I want to do Island Books, another mention, since that is your buddy's store.
Yep, Island Books and Crafts, St. Marie. Birch Bark Books in Minneapolis, Minnesota. McLean and Eakin in Petoskey, Michigan. I mean, those are just 3 of my favorite places.
All good stores. One of my favorites is the King's English Bookshop, but I really would like to see, I want to challenge everyone listening that they find an Indigenous-owned bookstore, particularly one that you are dear to, and start looking at pre-ordering now. The book will be hot. It will be amazing. So get it in your cart.
And the thing about indie booksellers is that, you know, these are the businesses that donate to your little league team, that buy ad space in your graduation booklet, you know, they host fundraisers and they're a part of the community, and a sale to them it's kind of like that pay it forward. It doesn't just help that bookseller, it helps the whole community because that bookseller is a part of the community.
I know we're not church, but I want to say amen. I'll even throw in a hallelujah. I have an interesting tidbit of fact that I just learned today, thanks to a friend. There's always, basically since Barnes and Noble started trying to take over our shares, and many independent bookstores closed because they sat on top of them. There's always been this thing of, oh no, the bookstores, Borders failing. Oh no, the bookstores. Always a point of clarification for me is that Borders failed because they made bad business decisions. They hired one failed CEO after another. That has nothing to do with selling books. And even with the giant online retailer that I'm sure if you say their name out loud, a puppy dies somewhere. Since 2019, according to the reporting regionals, which is their 7 regional offices of independent booksellers, in 2019, there was 1,178 independent bookstores that were members of their regions, which does not count stores that are not members of the region. So if you're listening and you have an independent bookstore and you're not part of your regional office, please, you can email me, you can call me, or I would happily direct you to the region that you're in. But now, as of 2022, there are 2,124 independent bookstores connected to their regional offices. Many of them are owned by people of color. Many of them are new and exciting models. And I think all of them will be carrying the new book.
Yes.
So it's the best of times, the worst of times. But thanks to understanding what an independent bookstore does for your community, our stores are surviving in a way that I don't know that we've had the luxury of doing in a very long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think COVID like really tested us and showed us how important our booksellers, our indie booksellers are to the community. People needed their book, and even if you had to call in your order and schedule a time to go pick it up, I mean, booksellers were there to, accommodated that. And so I love the book clubs that come out of the indie booksellers. I love the sense of community and the way that they can get behind a book. And I love when I go into an indie bookseller. Okay, this is my favorite thing, when they have their staff picks, and they're the actual staff people who are picking, like, what books are there. It's like, okay, these aren't necessarily the ones that make the list, or this or that, or got all the hype. These are the books that those staff members who know books, it's kind of like vouching for this. And to me, you can't go wrong with a staff pick.
I agree. And while we're on the subject of that, we should acknowledge the many great booksellers. Booksellers work so hard and are so amazing. They are a research librarian. They are an expert in a lot of different areas. They also customer service on top of all that, and the wealth of knowledge from their lifetime spent reading is something that you can't. There's no algorithm that can match that.
There's always that one person, that one staff member at a bookseller, at an indie bookstore, that like, they've been there forever, and they know what's gonna be a hit and what's not. Like, they can predict the bestseller lists, and if they give you that seal of approval, it's like, "What?" Yeah. There's always that one person that, yeah. And I love that.
I'm so thankful for that for those booksellers and all the bookstores I've worked with, because they also are great mentors. I will, speaking of mentors, I'm going to give a shout out to Underground Books in Sacramento, which is Black-owned nonprofit. And while I lived in Sacramento before coming to Salt Lake, I had the honor of working with Mother Rose, their longtime manager. And she, despite me coming in as the expert consultant, I learned more from her on a daily basis than I can even recount in any way. So, but that's the magic of independent bookstores. You think you know something, and you meet the bookseller that actually has a different perspective and knows it differently, and there are no wrong answers.
That is true. That is true.
I think we're getting close to opening up for questions.
I love questions. Okay, I was speaking at a high school, and usually they vet the questions, and at this one high school, they didn't. And this young man raised his hand, and he said, "Can you get me a part on the Netflix series?" And and I was just like, "Oh my." I said, "Well, what part do you think you should?" Because Firekeeper's Daughter has been the Obamas. I sold the film rights to the Obamas, and they're going to adapt it for a series for Netflix. And so this young man wanted to know if I could get him a part on the series. And I said, "Well, what role do you think you should play?" And he goes, "Oh, I don't know. I didn't read the book." And and I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, here's my business card, and you read the book. You tell me what part you think you should play and what part you think you would be so not suited for." And I'm still waiting to hear from him. But yeah, so I love any questions about the book.
Can we talk a little bit more about the Netflix series? Does it have a start date? Does it start filming?
Well, we have a showrunner and we have a head writer. The head writer is Winona Wilms, and she's a screenwriter from, I believe, Red Cliff Band of Ojibwe in Wisconsin. And so I'm just so excited. And so I wouldn't look for anything before maybe this time next year or into 2024, but It's happening, and I'm so excited.
Oh, that is so cool. Um, we talked about the audio offline for
Uh-huh.
Firekeeper's Daughter and how beautiful that is. With the new book, who will narrate? Who will narrate the new audio?
That has not been, decided yet. We're still going through the, like, final galley, proofs and all of that. Haven't decided. Um, but I was raised on audiobooks too. My dad was a truck driver, and he'd been listening to books on tape since they were on cassette tapes. Exchange shoe boxes with other truck drivers. And so I remember listening to different books on tape, and so I always have that ear for a story. And um yeah, I don't know who will narrate, but believe me, it will be someone that it's too important to me. Like, it will be I will be happy with it.
Um, and you got to be the final choice for the narrator of Firekeeper's Daughter. So I mean,
I did, and, that narrator is Isabella Starr LeBlanc, and she did the most phenomenal job. And the funny story is that we were so worried about making sure that the Ojibwe pronunciations were correct, that when I listened to the final cut, Isabella had mispronounced pasty as pasty, which is something completely different. And so it did get corrected on all of the digital versions, but there's still some hard copies out there that have it as pasty, or yeah, as pasties. So
oh, how funny.
anyway.
And maybe we'll talk about Libro FM. Libro FM is our indie channels option for, again, that giant online retailer who, when you say the name out loud, a puppy possibly dies. From their Audible, Libro FM is a more conscious, just in general, and then you can partner with your favorite indie bookstore, and a little bit of the proceeds of your purchases go to them. They're so kind. They're so generous. They for me are one of the best parts of my job that I get to talk about when I'm not talking about a book title.
Yeah. Libro FM, they reached out to my agent and my publicist early on, and they've done so well by me, and really made me feel special. And I just, I loved being connected with them.
Okay. Someone else loves Libro FM too. So we are ready for questions. Anyone has any, and otherwise we will keep talking.
There is one question. So there's a question about making time to write new books while promoting Firekeeper's Daughter. I have to tell you, it's pretty hard because it took 10 years to write Firekeeper's Daughter, and I did not have 10 years to do Warrior Girl Unearthed, not by any means. And then I honestly love doing reading events. I love book clubs, high school visits, conferences. I love being able to engage with readers. And so finding the time to write, it's been difficult. But I managed to figure it out and do it. So it was more of like wherever I had time. Whereas with Firekeeper's Daughter, it was more of getting up early and writing in the morning, because the rest of my day was devoted to my job at US Department of Education or my tribe or wherever I had been working. And so being a full-time author, in theory, I would have the whole day for writing, but that is not how it turned out. So it was kind of figuring out just how to fit in an hour to just, write, and an hour to edit something. And, if I got through a day and had a paragraph that I felt really good about, that was a really good day.
It's a lot of self-discipline, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And so you are writing full time, which means you're not with the Department of Education, but I'm sure you're still doing many other things.
Yes, I'm headed to DC tomorrow for a speaking engagement. And I was just in Anaheim for another conference last week. So um, things are, I love it. I just absolutely love my life as a full-time author. And I just feel so fortunate to be able to do it and connect with other authors, and especially, young, new debut authors coming up, and just the stories that are coming out. And I love it.
There, again, there's a wealth, and it's not enough, but of first-time novelists that are
Yeah.
just incredible. Have you read "Calling for a Blanket Dance" from Oscar
No,
Hosea?
that is on my TBR. Like that is on my TBR.
Bump it, you will not regret it.
Okay.
It'll be the next book. It is the best book I read this year, and I've read a lot of really good books. Um, and what I loved about the book beyond the story and the intimacy of the storytelling and the humor is the rhythm of his language.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, and I pondered this to try to put it to better terms than that, but I also found some of that rhythm in Firekeeper's Daughter. There's a, you know, I'm not a linguist. Oh, someone's asking, do your relatives appear in your novels?
Many of the characters were inspired by some of my relatives. So Granny June, yeah, she's definitely inspired by my cousin Elaine's grandma, who, man, that woman, she used to start every conversation with me as if we were in the middle of an argument. She would just, like, I would walk in the room and she would just start yelling at me. And I was like, what did I do? But that was just, yeah. It's just how we would converse with you. Yeah.
And then we have another question. Can you tell us a bit about what you are currently working on?
Hmm. Well, I'm finishing up the galley reviews and everything for Warrior Girl Unearthed. I do have plans for books 3 and 4 in my series. And we'll see what happens with that. So Firekeeper's Daughter, obviously fire, Warrior Girl Unearthed, Element of Earth. So I do have plans for a story centered around our water teachings and also around air. And so, we'll see what happens with that. I'm just thrilled to be able to do this.
Oh, again, you leave me speechless thinking about the possibility of your work. There was some foreshadowing about Donis and Jamie. Is that going to bear any fruit?
I am sure that answer will be revealed at some point. That is like the most like backhanded way of saying just know that I put Easter eggs in Firekeeper's Daughter. I knew at that point, I knew during the final edit that I would have a books 3 and 4, and you've already met the narrators of those, and so yeah.
It's this beautiful global aspect of thinking about these 4 books with the elements and just the tradition of storytelling in the Native community. Like it just, I don't know. It's something I would need to paint because I don't have the words for it.
Yep. And then for me, just always, coming full circle and the layers and depth of story that are out there. and things that we thought we knew that maybe we didn't, and being open-minded to see other things that weren't readily there. So I love my life as an author, and we'll see what happens with the Netflix series too. And wow, it's been a fantastic 2 years since you and I first met virtually.
Yeah.
And I could not be happier.
I loved seeing your journey, and I loved watching Firekeeper's Daughter just build momentum. In the bookstore, and it's no secret, but a book that is about a year and a half old is not as hot as it was, but yours still holds its place and holds its momentum, and we still get people who are dying to discover it for the first time, and that speaks well.
Yep. I hope that it has a good shelf life, and that my favorite things are when a grandma, a mom, and a teen read my book together, and that it opens up so much conversation. The other things that I love are when a teacher tells me that a student who is a reluctant reader, that they finish my book, that they read ahead, and that they're the first one done with my book. I've heard that more than once, and I love it. And I think one of my favorite experiences during the pandemic were when I would do an in-person event, and we would both be masked, and an Indigenous woman would come up to me, and we would have this conversation. And sometimes she couldn't get the words out because she was, very, choked up about it, and I would get choked up about it. But so it was just with our eyes, and it would be me asking her if I got it right, and her telling me that she felt seen. And it happened more, you know, it happened over and over. And honestly, it was like the most satisfying experience with a reader, to have that interaction and connection.
And no wonder you're the joy ambassador. Is that's a superpower, to be able to give someone the gift who is marginalized on a daily basis, the gift of being seen, and the gift of being heard, and the gift of shared experience.
Mhm.
Such a gift to all of us. I was scared that an hour was going to be really long, and it went really fast. Anything else that you want to end with? I mean, just
Oh gosh. Other native writers that I love, and honestly, to hand sell my book, Les Townsend from Island Books and Crafts. That man has hand sold more copies of my book than anybody in the world. And he just talks with customers, and he's like, "Hey, have you heard about this one?" And he just like "Hey, it's about this, it's about that." And he's just so engaged with the reader that, yeah, he can't he's wonderful. But yeah, some other native writers that I absolutely love. Marcy Rendon, the third book in her Cash Black Bear mystery series, came out recently. The first book is Murder on the Red River. Erica T. Worth, she is getting some much deserved love. Her book, White Horse, is getting a lot of love. And Therese Marie Bertineau, she has this memoir out, the Tin House, the Mason House, and it's also set in the Upper Peninsula. Gosh, some great books out there. I'm just so happy that Native authors. We've always had great storytellers, and we're finally getting the book deals. We're finally getting our books in bookstores so that, indie booksellers can hand sell our books. It's exciting.
It really is. I can give my pitch. So, Keeper's Daughter. It is beautiful. It is first-person Indigenous experience. There's a little bit of mystery and intrigue with fully fleshed out characters that will resonate with you long after you finish the book. Also, we didn't talk about this, and now we're running out of time, and I have so many more things to ask. The beauty of the prayer circle. I just want to thank you for that imagery. It was, for me, it was the perfect experience in the right time. And it let me pause in a way that I don't know that I normally do, because I'm a voracious reader. So taking that pause, and even listening to the audio this last week, I still took that pause and took a breath and appreciated the beauty of the prayer circle.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We're being kicked out.
So our stories are medicine. And I really wanted to show the beauty of our, ceremony, and that there's so much healing and connectedness in that. And so I was very happy to include that specific scene in the story, and the importance that is.
I thank you for sharing this time with me. And I look so much more forward to everything you're going to do.
Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you both so much for your time, and thank you to our audience for your amazing questions. This is actually our inaugural program in which we were bringing together our Joy Ambassadors and our BIPOC Bookseller Award winners. So this is the first, and it's definitely not going to be the last. It's just a way to bring together our bookselling community that is very near and dear to our heart, and our amazing, courageous authors that do the work that help all of us be seen. So thank you for the mirrors and the windows that you create, for these gateways and these portals that you create for all of us. It's a pleasure, and I cannot wait for more events like this. Please pre-order the books. They're in the comments here. We're gonna send another email blast to everyone with all of those links in there. And thanks for those shout outs for those bookstores. Some of them are on our database, some of them we are going to add. So we have over 100 bookstores that we feature on our database that are all owned and operated by individuals from marginalized communities. So we're super excited to hear yeah, that's on our database, and so excited to continue to grow it. You are both so amazing. Thank you for your time. Have fun in DC. And thank you, all of you. See you for the next event.